Jung's maximum transformative discovery wasn't approximately empathy alone. It became approximately the journey from wounded to warrior that particularly touchy individuals must take to upward push beyond the shadow, and why this change either destroys them completely or known, shows the mental strength they never knew they possessed. In his work on individuation and the wounded healer archetype, Jung documented what I call sensitivity transformation syndrome, a sample in which people with heightened emotional sensitivity could either remain trapped in victim patterns and psychological suffering or undergo what Jung termed shadow integration to end up psychologically incorporated and authentically powerful. Jung referred to as this technique transformative because these touchy people possessed what he defined as wounded healer ability, the ability to transform their mental wounds into wisdom and strength via conscious shadow paintings and individuation. Once they finally selected integration over identity with their wounds, they did not step-by-step enhance, but underwent what Jung called alchemical transformation. What made this discovery so extensive to Jung turned into that this journey from wounded to warrior wasn't just private recuperation, but represented the essential human challenge of individuation, reworking unconscious struggling into aware power through integration of the shadow and improvement of the genuine self. Today, I will reveal Jung's insights approximately the empath's unstoppable rise past the shadow and why he believed this alteration from wounded to warrior represents the very best achievement of human psychological improvement. The healer who refused to heal, Jung's step forward came through watching a patient who embodied the wounded healer paradox, someone with exceptional ability to assist others heal whilst remaining completely trapped of their personal mental struggling. This man or woman could provide profound insights to others, however seemed mysteriously unable to apply the equal knowledge to themselves. Jung witnessed something that challenged his information of human psychology. The patient actively resisted their own recovery, despite possessing the gear and information to transform their pain. They clung to their wounded identification as if it had been their most valuable ownership. Jung documented the person had made their wound into an identity as opposed to an instructor. They feared recuperation might suggest dropping their empathic capabilities, their connection to others' ache, and ultimately their sense of motive and specialness. Through careful evaluation, Jung found this affected person exemplified wound identification, the subconscious belief that their value trusted last damaged. They had harassed being hurt with being useful, struggling with sensitivity, victimhood with virtue. What disturbed Jung maximum changed into recognizing this sample anywhere. Sensitive individuals often grow to be so diagnosed with their wounds that they unconsciously sabotage recovery, fearing psychological fitness might in some way diminish their empathic gifts or lead them to ordinary. This case shattered Jung's assumptions approximately healing, revealing that transformation calls for no longer just therapeutic techniques, but whole identity reconstruction from sufferer to victor, from wounded to entire. The wounded identity psychology. Jung exposed why sensitive individuals withstand recuperation regardless of conscious dreams for well-being. They expand what he known as wound attachment syndrome, in which their pain becomes psychologically indispensable to their sense of self. Jung identified three additives preserving wounded identity: shadow rejection and false mild. Jung determined wounded empaths frequently create angel identities by projecting their potential for anger, selfishness, and energy onto others at the same time as seeing themselves as only loving. This mental splitting prevents integration and true power development. They fear getting access to their shadow because they associate electricity with the folks who harm them, developing an subconscious equation among non-public energy and turning into abusive. Struggling as currency, Jung documented how wounded people frequently receive ache, bills, sympathy, attention, identification, and cause derived from their victim status. Healing threatens to bankrupt this psychological economy. Jung mentioned that a few empaths unconsciously compete over who has suffered more. The use of their wounds as credentials for empathy and ethical superiority instead of material for increase. Identity, terror, and transformation resistance. Jung discovered that many empaths experience ego-death panic whilst thinking about healing due to the fact they do not know who they might be without their wounds. Their complete self, idea, relationships, and life motive has been organized around suffering. The possibility of well-being triggers existential terror, as it requires leaving behind acquainted victim identity and discovering their genuine self underneath mental harm. Jung realized this mechanism explains why authentic transformation feels threatening rather than appealing. It demands sacrificing the recognized wounded self for an unknown included self. The addiction to powerlessness. Jung diagnosed a disturbing pattern that maintains sensitive people trapped in sufferer cycles. What he called powerlessness dependency that offers subconscious blessings whilst preserving psychological struggling. Jung discovered that wounded empaths regularly increase learned helplessness that serves more than one unconscious functions past simply protection from in-addition damage. This powerlessness becomes psychologically addictive as it offers benefits that conscious power cannot offer. Jung documented particular dependency patterns, duty avoidance through victimhood. Jung referred to that ultimate wounded offers ideal excuses for no longer pursuing dreams, making difficult modifications, or taking dangers. The victim identity gives protection from failure, complaint, and the needs of proper residing. Powerlessness will become a secure prison as it calls for nothing except persevered suffering, whilst empowerment demands braveness, movement, and personal accountability, control through helplessness. Jung observed that many empaths unconsciously use their victimhood to govern others through guilt, sympathy, and rescue responses. Their powerlessness becomes a shape of manipulation that receives their needs met circuitously. This creates what Jung referred to as inverse energy, influencing others through weakness rather than power, that can experience more secure than direct announcement of wishes and boundaries, moral superiority through suffering. Jung found that a few empaths use their wounds to keep mental elevation above others. Their ache turns into evidence in their sensitivity, awareness, and spiritual development. This creates struggling narcissism, wherein wounds serve ego inflation rather than boom, making recovery feel like dropping special repute rather than gaining actual power. Worry of becoming the oppressor. Jung diagnosed that many empaths accomplish all styles of private electricity with the individuals who harm them, creating terror of becoming abusive if they broaden energy and assertiveness. This continues them trapped in powerlessness as a way of maintaining their self-image as exact, no longer realizing that aware energy serves each self and others, at the same time as unconscious powerlessness often enables damage. Jung emphasized spotting those patterns is not about self-blame, however, understanding subconscious dynamics that prevent authentic empowerment and transformation. In case you discovered yourself unusually attached on your wounds, remark, "I am geared up to be extra than my pain." The 4 ranges of empathic evolution. Jung identified 4 awesome mental tiers that sensitive people progress through on their adventure from wounded victim to incorporated warrior. Degree 1, the subconscious absorber. Those empaths revel in sensitivity as natural burden without recognizing transformation ability. Jung observed they sense constantly crushed by others' emotions, seeing their empathy as a curse that makes them vulnerable and susceptible. Unconscious absorbers have interaction in pain magnetism, unconsciously attracting drama and toxic situations that confirm their victim identification. They collect proof that the arena is merciless and they may be powerless to defend themselves. The step-forward moment occurs after they recognize their sensitivity as information, approximately, they develop mental desires in preference to evidence of cosmic unfairness or private defectiveness. Degree, the wounded helper. Jung recognized empaths who use their pain to help others even as closing unable to heal themselves. They come to be skilled at presenting insight and support, but keep their victim identification because the source of their empathic talents. These individuals worry that recovery would one way or the other diminish their connection to others' pain, or make them much less able to help. Jung located they mistake their wounds for their gifts. No longer understanding empathy enhances through integration. The evolution occurs once they keep in mind that recovery themselves enhances as opposed to diminishes their capability to serve others authentically and sustainably. Degree 3. The Shadow Integrator. Jung documented empaths who start consciously reclaiming their disowned psychological fabric, anger, selfishness, private strength, and assertiveness. This degree feels threatening as it challenges their pure light self. Photo. Shadow integrators often experience guilt and worry approximately expressing formerly suppressed emotions. Involved they may be becoming like folks who hurt them. They should analyze to differentiate among healthful assertiveness and dangerous aggression. The transformation accelerates after they understand that owning their shadow makes them greater actual and mockingly more empathic, because they're not projecting their darkness onto others. Level 4. The Integrated Warrior. Jung's most developed stage represents empaths who have efficaciously unified sensitivity with electricity, developing what he called conscious empathy. They hold deep feeling ability whilst growing unshakable private boundaries and proper energy. Integrated warriors display that empathy and energy beautify every other instead of competing. They could experience deeply without drowning, assist others without sacrificing themselves, and keep compassion at the same time as honoring their personal wishes. These individuals regularly turn out to be herbal leaders and healers who version wholesome empathy for others, showing that wounds can turn out to be expertise and sensitivity can emerge as a supply of electricity as opposed to vulnerability. The dangerous transformation terrain. Jung diagnosed precise mental risks which can smash empaths all through their wounded-to-warrior adventure, making this one of the most treacherous paths in human improvement. The identity annihilation disaster. Jung discovered that questioning wounded identification triggers psychological death terror in empaths whose entire field of self has been organized around their ache. Restoration can sense like ego annihilation as opposed to liberation. This disaster becomes so destabilizing that many empaths retreat to acquainted struggling rather than bear the uncertainty of coming across who they may be beyond their wounds. Jung documented excessive depression and tension all through identification transformation levels. The connection apocalypse. Jung recognized machine disruption cascades while restoration empaths cause protecting reactions in circle of relatives, contributors, buddies, and companions who benefited from their wounded styles. People often unconsciously sabotage the empath's increase to maintain familiar dynamics. Jung cited that those who relied on the empath's sacrifice may grow to be adverse, manipulative, or rejecting whilst boundaries emerge, developing isolation precisely when help is maximum needed at some stage in prone transformation durations. The shadow terror response. Jung warned that confronting disowned mental fabric can overwhelm empaths unprepared for the depth in their suppressed anger, selfishness, and electricity drives. Shadow integration can feel like moral corruption in place of psychological of completion. Without right guidance, empaths often worry they're turning into awful people whilst having access to formerly rejected factors, inflicting them to suppress their shadow again as opposed to integrate it consciously. The spiritual pass lure. Jung found empaths trying to transcend wounds through spiritual practices while heading off psychological integration paintings. They use love and light concepts to skip essential shadow paintings and proper electricity improvement. This creates premature transcendence that leaves mental wounds unhealed underneath non-secular veneer, preventing proper transformation and creating fragile pseudo-recovery that collapses under pressure. The inflation explosion. Jung documented empaths growing grandiosity for the duration of recovery, believing they have completed special reputation through their transformation. This will manifest as judgment of others nonetheless in sufferer patterns or claiming superior empathic capabilities. Inflation prevents completion of integration paintings because it recreates superiority-inferiority dynamics instead of proper empowerment based totally on mental wholeness. Jung's integration method. Jung advanced systematic procedures for navigating the wounded-to-warrior transformation without falling into the commonplace mental traps that derail empathic improvement. Energetic shadow engagement protocols. Jung insisted empaths need to consciously reclaim rejected mental fabric, rather than persevering with to assignment their darkness onto others. This includes intentionally exploring anger, selfishness, and power drives via established inner work. Jung created precise shadow practices, inspecting their most harsh judgments of others. Those regularly reveal projected shadow content, attractive with dream figures representing disowned elements, and working towards expressing suppressed emotions in safe, healing contexts. The goal is not becoming selfish or competitive, but attaining psychological completeness through integrating all elements of persona instead of identifying with best socially desirable components. Conscious boundary architecture. Jung developed systematic boundary training for empaths who fear that protection means turning into cruel or uncaring. This entails getting to know to distinguish between partitions that close out connection and filters that permit healthful interplay. Jung taught unique boundary competencies, declining requests without guilt or big justification, recognizing manipulation techniques and responding with readability in place of accommodation, and growing lively sovereignty, keeping awareness of personal, emotional country cut loose others. Healthy obstacles clearly beautify empathy via stopping the depletion and resentment that result from unlimited emotional availability. Authentic electricity improvement training. Jung identified empaths' need to research electricity inside instead of warding off all non-public energy due to worry of turning into oppressive. This includes coming across electricity that serves both man or woman and collective well-being. Jung's energy improvement covered declaring needs and alternatives directly in preference to through passive manipulation. Speak me truth, even if it creates pain in others, and taking leadership roles whilst their capabilities and perception can serve institution goals. The difference lies between proper strength, self-fest sovereignty serving larger proper and fake strength, domination serving ego needs, identification, reconstruction procedures. Jung understood empaths need systematic methods for coming across who they're past their wounds while keeping their empathic gifts. This involves archetypal reorientation from victim to healer or warrior patterns. Jung developed identification exploration practices, analyzing natural skills and pursuits separate from trauma responses, exploring how sensitivity can serve creative or recuperation functions, and developing conscious carrier, assisting others from wholeness in preference to woundedness. This permits empaths to preserve their being concerned nature whilst serving from power rather than sacrifice, developing sustainable rather than depleting assisting patterns, transformation, fulfillment testimonies, and screw-ups. Jung's analysis, well known, shows vital differences among empaths who effectively entire the wounded-to-warrior adventure and people who continue to be trapped in victim styles. Integration, fulfillment. Viktor Frankl exemplified Jung's wounded healer transformation by using his Holocaust trauma as material for growing logotherapy and assisting others discover which means in struggling. As opposed to ultimate identified as a victim, he converted his ache into expert cause. Frankl's achievement came from what Jung might name meaning-making integration, using his wounds as instructors in place of identity, developing energy through adversity in preference to final broken violet. Jung could observe that Frankl maintained his sensitivity to suffering whilst developing mental resilience that allowed him to assist others without being traumatized by means of their pain. Integration success. Nelson Mandela exemplified Jung's wounded healer transformation by the usage of 27 years of imprisonment and oppression as fabric for growing empathic management that served not simply his people but humanity. He demonstrates Jung's conscious empathy via retaining compassion for his oppressors whilst setting clean boundaries approximately justice and equality. Mandela's method suggests how empaths can transform their innermost wounds into wisdom that serves collective healing rather than remaining trapped in resentment, growing what Jung referred to as transformative struggling that benefits both person and network. His fulfillment consists of refusing to stay diagnosed with his victimization, even as honoring the training it taught approximately human dignity, forgiveness without permitting, and the strength of real energy in service of justice. Integration, failure, the expert sufferer. Jung documented styles of those who construct complete identities and careers round their wounds without ever genuinely recovery or reworking. They turn out to be what he called trauma entrepreneurs who benefit from ache without transcending it. These people regularly resist restoration due to the fact it had threatened their livelihood, relationships, and feel of specialness, retaining them trapped in cycles of struggling and resentment. Jung stated they'll assist others, however, from shared woundedness in preference to integrated energy, frequently developing dependency as opposed to empowerment in those they serve. Essential success elements. Jung identified key factors distinguishing transformation from stagnation: willingness to take obligation for recovery instead of waiting for outside rescue, capacity to look wounds as instructors instead of permanent identity markers, and courage to chance dropping sufferer fame blessings in exchange for genuine empowerment. As success, transformation calls for what Jung called psychological heroism, facing uncomfortable truths, approximately themselves, and making tough changes, notwithstanding social pressure to stay in acquainted wounded styles. Building warrior help networks. Jung diagnosed empaths want specific community aid for the duration of transformation, requiring relationships that inspire boom in place of enabling victim styles or punishing strength development. Identifying growth catalysts. Jung recognized individuals who aid empathic transformation. They encourage private duty in place of reinforcing victim narratives. Rejoice others' success and boundary improvement without feeling threatened. Exhibit integrated sensitivity themselves through healthy limitations and real electricity. Increase catalysts understand that supporting healing, sometimes method, refusing to enable drama or participate in sufferer competitions. Alternatively, keeping area for empowerment. Heading off wound bonding traps, Jung warned approximately relationships based in most cases on shared trauma or sufferer identity. Whilst these connections experience intensely intimate, they regularly prevent increase by requiring each events to stay wounded. Wound-bonded relationships typically contain mutual reinforcement of sufferer tales, competition over suffering severity, and resistance to one person's recovery if it threatens the shared wounded identification. Wholesome relationships aid each event's evolution rather than requiring them to remain stuck in familiar styles for dating protection. Developing transformation communities. Jung advocated for environments that honor each sensitivity and power, normalize mental increase and trade, and offer sensible assist for boundary improvement and power integration. Those consist of remedy corporations targeted on empowerment in place of simply trauma processing, creative communities where sensitivity serves artistic expression, and spiritual environments emphasizing integration as opposed to bypassing mentorship and modeling connections. Jung emphasized connecting with individuals who encompass integrated empathy, demonstrating that sensitivity and power decorate each different. These mentors provide each concept and practical steerage. Seeing others who have efficiently completed the wounded to warrior transformation presents evidence that empowerment is possible while maintaining empathic items instead of sacrificing them for strength. The 5-phase evolution process. Jung documented the precise psychological changes empaths enjoy all through their transformation from wounded sufferer to included warrior. Section 1. Pain recognition without cause. Empaths begin acknowledging their wounds consciously as opposed to numbing or denying them. This segment regularly feels worse to start with due to the fact they are experiencing ache without yet expertise its transformative capacity. The breakthrough happens after they prevent seeing their sensitivity as punishment and start recognizing it as facts approximately their psychological improvement needs and empathic gifts. Segment 2. Shadow, disagreement, and integration. Empaths face their disowned mental cloth, in particular anger approximately being used, selfishness they have suppressed, and private electricity they have got rejected. This phase triggers guilt and fear approximately turning into like folks who harm them. Integration includes distinguishing between healthful assertiveness and harmful aggression. Getting to know that owning their shadow makes them extra actual and satirically extra truly empathic. Section 3. Boundary creation and checking out. Empaths broaden and put into effect mental obstacles that guard their sensitivity at the same time as permitting genuine connection. This triggers resistance from others acquainted with limitless get right of entry to